All right, guys. Joining us here on Submission Radio is a WWE NWA Hall of Famer who is an iconic figure in pro wrestling. He now hosts a hugely successful podcast via Podcast One called The Ross Report, as well as his one-man show touring around the world. Jim Ross, welcome back to Submission Radio. How's it going today?
Everything's good. Good to talk to you guys again. Hope you're well.
Well, we're very well now that you're on the program. It's been a big 2016 for you, but we saw some recent updates where you've had a meeting with some Australian representatives about bringing your barbecue sauce and products to our shelves. Jim, is this true, and when can we expect it at our shores?
Well, it is definitely true. We've had very productive meetings last week in Los Angeles with a Australian contingent of entrepreneurs and businessmen, and that went well. I think that we're probably one more productive meeting away from being able to announce something positive, but right now it looks good. So fingers crossed, and we'll keep you updated.
Good, because I've been doing a lot of barbecuing, Jim, and my meat is lacking something. So I'm hoping that your sauce can provide that extra something. Now, of course, when it comes to pro wrestling, there was a huge splash made in the MMA world when Brock Lesnar announced his return to UFC 200 some weeks ago. You know, what surprised fans even more was that the WWE could come to a deal with the UFC to let him do the fight. You know, from being around Vince for so many years, were you surprised he agreed to a deal like this?
Well, not really. Brock is a part-time performer for WWE. Certainly a phenomenal performer, and certainly one could also say he or John Cena are 1 and 1A as far as the top guys in the company. But I think that Vince certainly wants to keep his talent happy. The happier you keep your guys, the more productive they will be. Brock had an opportunity to earn a remarkable payday for UFC 200, and I'm hearing all kinds of numbers. I have no idea conclusive what the number is, but I'm thinking it's certainly north of $3 million, which is, and maybe more than that, which is a pretty good, as they say, day's work. So I think Vince probably wanted to keep Brock happy, but I certainly think that somewhere down the road, Vince's generosity will be repaid by the UFC in the form of something that is good for WWE. Could be, we must talked about Ronda Rousey at WrestleMania 33. Something like that could certainly be in the card. So I think the way I looked at it, and I wrote about it on my website, it's a win-win. I think everybody wins. Lesnar gets a great payday. UFC gets an attraction that's going to help drive pay-per-view buys without question. And WWE makes the talent happy. I'm sure got some compensation for it directly, and then some sort of indirect payoff at a time to be determined is probably in the works as well.
It's an interesting situation. I know you talked about it being a win-win, but if Lesnar goes in there and gets knocked out by Mark Hunt in brutal fashion in the first round, does that hurt his credibility in the WWE when he returns? Because in a lot of ways, he's the biggest monster the company has.
No, I don't think so. I can certainly see why that question would be asked, and it's a good question. I think that people are now, with all the information on social media, heck, I got almost 1.5 million Twitter followers. What the hell's that about? You know what I mean? It's like, there's all kinds of information out there. I think people could differentiate a real sport UFC athletic event from a structured theatrical-based presentation in sports entertainment. I don't think it would hurt him at all, quite frankly.
Now, we've been asking everybody this, and I want to get your opinion. Do you expect this being a one-time thing? Or, if Lesnar wants to do so, do you think he could potentially have a couple more fights in the future?
I would say more fights in the future would be, I'm guessing, strictly guessing, less than 50-50. I would approach this as it's more than likely the last time I'm going to see Brock Lesnar in the octagon. But as sure as I say that, he goes out there and has a stellar performance against a heavy-handed Mark Hunt and gets his hand raised. He may get the itch to do another one somewhere down the road. And again, if the money's right, obviously UFC's paying WWE something for the use of Brock Lesnar services, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's a unique deal because it's never happened before. But I think it's a win-win for everybody in that regard. So it's hard to say he'll have another fight. I lean that he will not, but I think a lot of it is what you alluded to, the outcome of this fight. I am going to the fight. I'll be in Las Vegas. I'm of the belief, fellas, that I don't think the fight will get out of the first round. I don't know who's going to go to sleep first in the octagon before they go to sleep in their hotel room later in the night. But somebody's getting knocked out, and I think it'll be inside 5 minutes.
Let me ask you something, Jim, because there's been a lot of contention about how long Brock's actually known about this fight. Obviously, 4 weeks of training isn't enough for him to come back into an octagon against a guy like Mark Hunt. How long do you think he's been getting ready for this return to the UFC? And how long do you think he's sort of known in the back of his head that he'll be doing something at UFC 200?
He's a very pragmatic guy. He's like old, blue-collar, and kind of a nuts and bolts guy, not a fancy guy. He fashions himself as a farmer, a rancher, outdoorsman, and it's all true. It's not an act. So I would tell you that he knows that anything less than probably an 8-week camp is not going to be acceptable for his own standards. The last thing he wants to do is to make his return in this much ballyhooed matchup of two knockout guys and lay an egg. That I don't think he wants to soil the sheets on that deal. So he's just a competitive guy. So I'm telling you that I would guess by the time the fight rolls around, he will have at least 8 good weeks of training under his belt.
It's interesting because a healthy Brock Lesnar, it's a dangerous thing. Do you think there's a chance we'll see the best version of Brock Lesnar so far on July 9th? Because he's been looking great in the WWE, very, very healthy. And obviously he had the issues with diverticulitis near the end of his career. And at the start of his career, he was fairly inexperienced.
Yes, I think that we will see a healthy Brock Lesnar. And he was not healthy, as you mentioned, his last handful of fights because of the diverticulitis. Being one that has experienced diverticulitis, culminating with having 13 inches of my large intestine removed and my intestines reconnected, it's not a real fun process. I don't know that he had that extreme, surgery. But in any event, he'll be healthy, and I think that'll be a lot of difference. The bacteria and the poison, the infection will be out of his body. He'll be able to get strong again. It'll affect his stamina. I'm a whole lot more worried about his striking defense than I am his readiness to fight or his physical conditioning. I think his conditioning will be good, but I can't see that he or Hunt are going to prepare for a long fight. I think they both know that it's going to end violently and suddenly earlier than maybe some want to discuss. But, Lesnar will be ready to go. He'll be ready to go, and he'll be healthy, and that's the main thing. So it should be fun. Like I said, I'm more worried about stand-up defense than I am his conditioning.
Yeah, certainly. And I mean, the interesting thing is obviously he's got Summerslam coming up, which is a huge show. Is the WWE taking a bit of a risk? Because Mark Hunt, he's a serious hitter. I mean, we all saw what he did to Stefan Struve's jaw. He just broke that thing in half. Are they worried at all about the fact that maybe Hunt can hurt Lesnar so badly that he wouldn't be able to return in time to do SummerSlam?
I can't speak for WWE, of course, but I can tell you that in all likelihood, if Brock wanted this fight that he approached them with, they're all for it. Obviously, this stylistically is one of the less advantageous matchups that Lesnar could have gotten to return. If your weakness, and I think his weakness has always been, or at least has exposed the last few fights, and again, the weakness of the diverticulitis, his conditioning and all that stuff was a contributing factor, but it was obvious that he has problems with striking defense. A lot of amateur wrestlers do, and hopefully some of that will be eased in this camp. I hope, it's got to be, because the one thing that Lesnar has a weakness at is the one thing that Mark Hunt is really, really good at. So, it's going to be a compelling fight, and I don't think WWE had anything to do with the matchup. I think the deal was done, a business deal was done, in my opinion. That's all. They had nothing to do with the matchmaking. That was Dana White and the Fertitta brothers getting that deal put together, and their matchmakers. They knew what they wanted. I'll tell you this. I've got a lot of friends that they might have got together and watched UFC 200, but now that Lesnar's on the card and the train wreck potential of that whole scenario, it seems to be a lot more interest. I think that his inclusion on the card is going to stimulate pay-per-view buys immensely globally.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's something that even, MMA fans would agree. Even MMA fans are excited about this, even though Lesnar spent, the better part of 4.5 years in the WWE. I wanted to get your thoughts on something. Obviously, Fedor Emelianenko had a less than impressive fight last weekend, but do you still want to see him versus Lesnar in the UFC? Or after his latest fight, have you sort of lost interest, Jim?
I have not lost interest, and I don't think the general public has lost interest. Fedor can be easily resurrected. The library on him is unbelievable. It's easy to get him reestablished. He's not moving from Russia, so even though it sounds so blasé and passé, the North American, the United States versus Russia storyline still plays. Is it kind of getting dated? Probably, but I can tell you this: when the United States was playing Canada in the last Winter Olympics in hockey, and of course America is not an amateur hockey state or country. The broadcast was on fire. The nationalistic thing. So the point I'm making. So the USA versus Russia concept, in parentheses, is still sellable, and everybody knows it's not going to be a pretty fight. You're going to see somebody get their ass whipped. It's just going to be who could get the biggest punch into somebody's face, or a liver shot, or something debilitating. So you know that you're going to have a train wreck if you have Fedor and Brock, because it can't be pretty. It can't be. So I think people, if it's on a good card, it gets a rating. It sells either pay-per-views or gets a massive television rating.
Yeah, certainly. And if you had to pick that fight now, I mean, obviously that fight was supposed to happen in 2009, but now we're so many years after that. Is Fedor still the favorite in your opinion? Do you think Brock can beat him now that it's sort of a bit down the road for Fedor?
Fedor's last fight was not overly impressive, but it was on. It wasn't on. It wasn't on broadcast television. I don't know how many people actually saw it, and so. But I saw clips of it, and he didn't have a great night. Obviously, I don't know all that behind the story, the backstory is. I have no idea. I was, until I see Brock fight again, you kind of got to go with the guy that's still in the game. So Fedor is still in MMA. Lesnar has not been for, as you mentioned, several years. So I would think Fedor would still be a slight favorite based on the fact that he's still an active MMA practitioner.
We're going to ask you, on the other side of the spectrum, CM Punk, he's really struggled to make his UFC debut, but the word is UFC 203 is finally the date. It's locked in. He's going to be fighting Mickey Gall. What do you make of this, Jim? It's taken him a long time to finally get here, and we've had a fight penciled in the past. Do you think he makes it to 203, and what are you expecting from Punk when he makes his MMA debut?
I think one of the great things about UFC signing CM Punk is that they have no expectations as to what to expect. I don't know how any fan can have any bona fide or legitimate expectations, because we just don't know. It's totally foreign. It's a whole new world, new pitch. It's a new game for CM Punk. I know he's very cerebral. I know he's a big fan of the genre. He's worked hard. He's a very, very smart guy, driven, if you will. He doesn't even know how he's going to do. So I think that the unknown is what's going to sell that fight. Don't doubt for a minute that the UFC or the WWE fans are going to want to buy a UFC event, because it's just we're too curious. We have no idea what's going to happen. Is Punk going to get knocked out in the first minute? Is he going to get bloodied up and beat half to death because we know that he won't quit readily? Or is he going to come in and shock the world and be a world beater and a kick-ass MMA guy? I don't know. All I know is that he'll be mentally and physically ready. I will certainly buy the fight because I'm as curious as the next fan. What the heck's going to happen?
I mean, one of the things we've been sort of debating with people and talking about is the fact that now that there's a bridge built between the WWE and the UFC with this Lesnar thing, do you think there's a chance we may see him return to the WWE at some point next year because of the relationship between the UFC and the WWE, and it's there now?
Absolutely not. I don't think one thing has to do anything with the other. He's his own guy. I think this deal, this newfound relationship that we're all talking about, is a is a very one-dimensional one. It has to do with Brock Lesnar and Brock Lesnar alone, in my view. And it's a simple deal. Yeah, you'll get him for July the 9th, and then we'll get blank for WrestleMania 33 or something, and cash, or whatever. But no, I don't think so. I don't. In CM Punk is, I would think, if I was booking any company, he'd be a guy you definitely want for a lot of reasons. But I just don't know how the feelings are left. I wasn't there in the front line like I was at one point. I don't really know how it's all left. I've read things. I know about pending lawsuits and all this other crap. So I don't really know, but I just don't see Punk making a return to WWE anytime soon. There are other companies that he can work in. I can see him having a great run in New Japan for a lot of money, draw a lot of money, make a lot of money, and enjoy the heck out of the process, for example. But, he may not even want to get back into wrestling. We don't know that. We're assuming that he will. I don't think he needs the money. I think he's just smart with his money, unlike a lot of his peers. So, I think his wrestling career could very well, on the WWE level, be history. With somebody else, you never know. And look, again, one nice meeting with WWE could probably address a lot of issues as well. So it's just one of those deals you can't predict. It'd be great if he went back and had a great run and could end up on fire with a WrestleMania main event and all that stuff. It'd be a great story to write. But I just don't know that it's going to happen.
Jim, we really appreciate the time you're giving us. As we let you go, we're excited to see your barbecue sauce and products down here in Australia, but are there any plans for you to come down and, do your show here for the fans sometime?
Well, I do my podcast every week called The Ross Report, and it's on Podcast One and iTunes. It's a free podcast, and I talk about that from time to time because I get questions from the Twitter folks asking me. I have never been to Australia in all the years I've been on TV there, decades. I've been on television there since the WCW days. So I would love to come down there. We need to find a good, strong promoter that's used to bringing acts to Australia, and find some, 300 to 500 seat venues or small theaters or whatever that we can play. I'd love to bring my show down there. It's an easy show to produce. It's a fun show. It's basically Q&As, but I do a little, stand-up type material. Sometimes it's funny, and sometimes it's not. Depends how much I've had to drink. Sometimes you get overserved in these damn places, So, but I'd love to, and I hope that folks will keep that in mind. I'll certainly let you guys know if we get something working, and or somebody or somebody's listening, and they're an entertainment promoter. Tour guy, a concert promoter, there's ways to get hooked up and see what we can work out. So the door is open to do that. I just hope that we can get it worked out. And I keep saying it's going to be this year, and it looks right now it's going to be 17, but that might work too because my book will be out by then, and so that might tie in well as well. So, or I might be down there before that if we get our sauces and stuff on the grocery store shelves, which again looks very favorable.
Well, there you guys go. And obviously the show is fantastic. We've had a really good review on it every time you go around the world and do it. And any promoters listening to this right now, make sure to reach out to Jim because it would be a huge event here for the fans. Now, Jim, you mentioned Twitter. So as we let you go, one last question. The Twitter followers have been asking us to ask you this. Roman Reigns, he's suspended from the WWE, obviously lost his title. What was your reaction to this whole situation? And how much do you think this hurt the WWE with him having to sort of exit the picture just as he was starting to gain a little bit of steam with the fans?
Well, it's embarrassing for the talent. I have no idea what he was, what a substance that you want to hope inadvertently was taking. There's a lot of the wrestlers, men and women, are really big into the supplements out of the health food stores, and if they're not careful and they don't really vet it and see what's on those ingredients, they could be inadvertently taking something that's against the wellness program. So I'm assuming that's what he did. He's a hell of a good kid. I had a lot of fun when he was in developmental when I was still working in WWE, helping him and talking with him, kind of mentoring him a little bit, like a lot of guys did, because he was so you wanted to mentor him because he listened and he put what you told him into practice. So I'm disappointed in him. And he's got to pay more attention if that's what the case was. And hopefully he'll learn a great lesson now this 30 days he's setting. And hopefully he won't be setting. He'll be getting better. And I sent out a tweet at JRSBBQ recently that said, this is not, the game's not over. It was an inadvertent timeout. So now you got to come back better than you left, and make up for lost time. So I don't know that it hurt WWE. You have to rearrange creative. I'm sure that he'll come back. I would put him back in the triple threat match at Payback. You don't want to discount the other guys' efforts creatively and what they built to get to this triple threat match. It costs the other two guys more or as much as it costs Reigns if you don't have him in the match. And so I don't know who wins in that equation. The fans don't win. So I think the triple threat match should be booked and held. So, but he's got to be smarter on what he takes. The company has invested lots of money. The talent's invested a lot of their time and efforts into helping him. And he's got to just be smarter than he was. And like I said, I just want to believe that it was totally inadvertent and that it will not happen again is my hope for him. Because he's a good kid, and he can be a real strong force in that locker room for years to come. But he's got to make better decisions.
Well, there you go, guys. You heard it from the legend himself. Make sure to follow JR on Twitter at JRSBBQ. His weekly podcast, The Ross Report, on Podcast One. And make sure to look out for JR's barbecue sauce and products, hopefully making their way down to Australia very soon. And hopefully, Jim, if not 2016, then at least 2017 is the year that we finally see Jim Ross come down to Australia. And for more information, you guys can go to www.jrsbarbq.com. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate chatting to you, Jim.
Okay, fellas, have a great day. I appreciate you, and good day.